Hey guys, how are you? My name is Rafiq Wayani. In another lovely video, I'm going to show you very quickly how to use and create logical volumes using a logical volume manager inside of CentOS. I've got CentOS 8 installed, but the way and the method with which I'm doing this, you can do it the exact same way in CentOS 6, 7, and 8. Let's take a look at what I'm trying to talk about. Okay? So, to try to give you a little bit of an understanding, you have hard drives, correct? First you have hard drives that you perhaps make partitions of, right? And then once you make partitions of these drives, and who says you don't have to, maybe you don't need partitions, right? Maybe in your instance, you've just got raw drives. In my instance, I've got 3 drives. I've got SDB, SDC, and SDD, okay? As you will see in my case. I've got B, C, and D. And in my case, A is reserved for the OS, and I do not have a E in my case. Each of these drives here, each of these drives are 2 gigs apiece, right? Each of them are 2 gigs apiece. So basically, when you combine the 3, you get 6 gigs of space. Since I don't really know how to write, it's 6 gigs of space. Okay, just to give you an example. Also, I am not creating partitions, but you can. You can create partitions out of each one of these devices. When you create a partition utilizing LVM, you can indicate that they're going to be used for the purposes of the logical volume manager, making them a LVM type of a partition. Very easy. It's of type 8E instead of type 8.3, which is Linux. Then, once you have your partitions created, if that's what you want to do, you then create what's called physical volumes. And this is where the LVM scene comes into the picture. Okay? And what I mean by that is, in the case of LVM, it is made up of these physical volumes and volume groups and then logical volumes. And then logical volumes are the ones that get turned into, that you format and use for the purposes of a file system. Okay? So basically, I'm going to have these 3 volumes that I'm going to put into my physical volume, also known as a PV. Then I'm going to create a volume group. In my case, the volume group name is going to be all docs. And once I construct that volume group, I'm going to create a couple of logical volumes. In my case, the couple of logical volumes that I'm going to build are going to be called sales docs and archive docs. Okay? So what ends up happening is that your physical volumes, first, is what you construct. The physical volumes are constructed either from partitions or constructing them from not just raw drives. In my case, I'm not just going to be constructing them from raw drives, but I'm going to be constructing them from devices SDB, SDC, and SDD. I don't have one of these, and I don't have one of these. Well, that SDA is reserved for the OS. So now that we've talked about it, let me show you how it's done. I'm going to first create the physical volumes, right? So I'm going to do PV create dev SDB, dev SDC, dev SDD. And there are my physical volume essentially created. I included 3 disks. So if I do a PVS, short for PV scan, physical volume scan, I can see my 3 disks that are 2 gigs apiece. Right? If I do a ls block, listing block devices, you'll see my 2 gig disks right here. I haven't done anything with them so far. I have not created a volume group or a logical volume that I can format and use. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a volume group, VG create, and I'm going to add those. So volume group create, I'm going to call the volume group all docs, and I'm going to say that dev SDB, dev SDC, and dev SDD are part of that. All docs is constructed. When I do VGS, short for volume group scan, I can see that I have almost 6 gigs available in this all docs volume. Okay? Now, once I've done that, I'm going to create 2 logical volumes. I'm going to create the sales docs and archive docs. logical volumes from the all docs volume group that I just built. I'm going to take slices out of there. A 500 meg slice for sales docs and 250 meg slice for archive docs. Let's take a look. So I'm going to do LV create, and I'm going to do name sales docs, size 500 meg from all docs. There you go. And I'm going to create a 250 meg slice. 250 meg slice. Like so. And I'm going to create the 250 meg slice for archive docs. Like so. Done. And it says it's rounding it up to the next available size. That's there. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to do an LSBLK. Look right here. Okay. This is where it borrowed from. You notice that? It's going to use up as much as it can from one volume before it goes to the other. Okay. LVM is not responsible for distributing the load under the hood. That's another discussion. So here I've got archive docs, and here I've got sales docs. And it's all underneath all docs. You see how this is laid out? Okay, now I'm going to format this. Now when you format it, it's going to go under devices, mapper, and then the volume group name, as you see right here, volume group name. And then you see the logical volume name, as you see right here, the logical volume name. So I'm going to create MKFS ext4 dev mapper, and I'm going to say all docs, sales docs. So there you go, did that. And now I'm going to create it for archive docs. Archive docs. Done. Okay, so created the file system, and so far, so good. I'm going to then create a couple of directories, sales docs and archive docs, and then I'm going to mount them. Okay, so I'm going to do mkdir, mnt, and I'm going to create a sales docs directory, and I'm going to create a archive docs directory, like so. Then I'm going to do mount dev mapper, devices mapper, all docs, sales docs. Come on. Sales docs. I'm going to map it to MNT sales docs, like so. And I'm going to map archive docs to archive docs. Let's take a look. Archive docs to archive docs. Okay. There you go. Mount it. Then I'm going to do a DFH. Take a look at what I got. Here you go. Here are my mounted volumes. See them? And if you notice, I've got 445 megs of available space on the one that I created 500 megs worth, which is sales docs. I made it 500 meg, remember? Right over here. I made sales docs 500 meg, and it's telling me that I've got 445 meg available. And I built a 250 meg, 252 meg archive docs that it's given me 222 megs, so the rest is overhead. So far, so good, isn't it? So I've got this done over here, and I check this space right there. Now what I want to do is I want to extend this. I'm going to extend archive docs by 1 gig. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to extend archive docs by 1 gig. So basically, I want to see this number go up. So if I do LV extend -L, add a gig to dev mapper all docs, archive docs, like so. Look, it extended it. It says resized. And I'm going to do what's called resize to FS. I'm going to extend it. Now, I did an LV extend, logical volume extend. I'm going to tell the file system that that's really what I did. Go over here, do a resize to FS, and I'm going to say dev mapper all docs, archive docs. Okay, enter. Did it. Now what's going to happen? I'll show you now what's going to happen. I'm going to do a DFH right over here. And notice now in archive docs, right? Archive docs, I've got a 1.2 gig available. It was 222 megs available. Now I've got 1.2 gigs available. Okay? So in this video, I showed you how you can create a physical volume, volume group, a logical volume, essentially making up the logical volume manager, where physical volumes are constructed from either raw disks or partitions. I use raw disks. Volume groups are constructed from the physical volumes that you've added, and then logical volumes are constructed from volume groups. You format and use the logical volumes. I'm really glad you were here.